All right, let's dive into a really core piece of the cloud today, Azure Blob Storage. We're going to break down exactly what it is, how it works, and most importantly, how you can use it to manage just massive amounts of data. Let's get right into it.
Just think about it for a second. Every single photo you take, every video, every document, every log file that your applications are spitting out, it all has to go somewhere. We are living in a true data explosion. And honestly, the biggest challenge isn't just creating the data anymore, it's figuring out where to store it all in a way that's smart and doesn't break the bank. So, where does it all go? Well, for a whole lot of us, the answer is the cloud.
And that right there brings us to Blob Storage. You can think of it as the absolute bedrock, the foundational building block for storing pretty much any kind of data in Azure.
So what is it really? The official definition talks about storing unstructured data as binary large objects, or blobs. Now don't let that fancy term throw you off. A blob is just a file. Seriously, it could be a video, a PDF, a giant backup file, an image. It's just a chunk of data. That's it.
To make this whole thing really click, let's use an analogy that we'll stick with. I want you to picture your Azure storage account as a giant physical warehouse. It's this enormous, empty space where you can keep literally anything and everything you want. This warehouse is our central idea.
Okay, so you've got this massive digital warehouse. What's the next logical problem you're going to face? Well, how do you keep it from becoming a complete mess? You can't just throw everything onto the floor, right? It would be total chaos. You need a system, and in Azure, that system starts with something called a container.
So in the Azure world, a container is your first layer of organization. It's just a simple way to group related blobs, or files, together. But here's the crucial part. It's also where you manage security. You get to decide who can read the files inside or who can add new ones, all at the container level.
Let's go back to our warehouse. If your storage account is the entire building, then containers are the different labeled aisles, or maybe even separate locked rooms inside. You might have one big section for all your website images, another secure room just for financial backups, and a whole other area dedicated to application log files. It's what brings order to all that potential chaos.
Okay, so we've got our warehouse, and we've got it organized into rooms. Now, what about the actual things, the files that we're storing? Well, it turns out that not all data behaves the same way, so Azure gives us different kinds of boxes, or what it calls blob types, and each one is designed for a very specific purpose.
You basically get three main choices, and each one is optimized for a different job. First up, you've got block blobs. These are your go-to, your workhorse for big files you upload once and then don't really change. Think video files, daily backups, or images. Then you have page blobs. These are all about super fast random reads and writes. The perfect example is a virtual hard drive for a VM, where the operating system is constantly reading and writing little bits of data all over the disk. And finally, there's the append blob. The name kind of gives it away, right? This is perfect for things like log files, where you're only ever adding new information to the end of the file. You never go back and change what's already there.
And this is so important. You don't just blindly dump your data into storage. You have to stop and think about how you're going to use it. Are you writing it once and reading it 1,000 times? Are you constantly updating it from all different places? Or are you just adding to a running list? Choosing the right blob type from the get-go is absolutely key to getting the best performance and, of course, the best price.
And speaking of cost, that brings us to the next really smart feature of blob storage. See, inside our digital warehouse, not everything needs the same level of priority. Some things you need to grab instantly, while other things you might not touch for years. And this is where you can get really clever with your budget, by using something called access tiers. It's all about a simple trade-off. First, you've got the hot tier. This is for data you're using all the time. It's lightning fast, we're talking millisecond access, but it also has the highest storage cost. Think of this as the shelf right by the loading dock in your warehouse. Then you've got the cool tier. This is for stuff you don't access as often, maybe once a month. It's still super fast to retrieve, but the cost to just let it sit there is a lot lower. And then you have the archive tier. This is for your deep, long-term storage, your historical data. It is incredibly cheap to store, but, and this is a big but, there's a catch.
And that catch is time. As the documentation says, data in the archive tier is effectively stored in an offline state. This is not for data you need in a hurry. Getting it back, which is a process called rehydration, can actually take several hours. It's literally like telling a warehouse worker to go find a specific box in the deepest, darkest corner of the building. It's safe, it's cheap, but it is not fast.
Wow.
Okay, so managing all of this, the blob types, the access tiers, it might sound like a lot of manual work, right? Well, thankfully, you don't have to. You can actually put your entire digital warehouse on autopilot. So let's talk about how to automate this, and then we'll wrap up with the key takeaways.
The magic tool for this is called life cycle management. It's basically a set it and forget it policy, where you create a simple set of rules. For instance, you can say, hey, if a file hasn't been touched in 30 days, automatically move it for me from the hot tier down to the cool tier. Then, if it sits in cool for another 90 days untouched, go ahead and move it to archive. And you know what? If it's over 7 years old, just delete it for me. It's an unbelievably powerful way to automate your cost savings without you having to lift a finger.
So, let's tie this all together with our warehouse analogy one last time. Your Azure storage account, that's the warehouse. The rooms you use to organize everything, those are your containers. The boxes you put your stuff in, that's your blob type, and you've got to pick the right one, block, page, or append. Your temperature control for the different rooms, that's your access tiers, hot, cool, and archive to balance cost and speed. And finally, the autopilot system that runs the whole warehouse for you, that's lifecycle management.
At the end of the day, every single piece of data you own has a life cycle. It gets created, it's used for a while, and eventually it either gets archived for the long haul or deleted. So the real question to leave you with is this: are you actively managing that life cycle, or are you just letting it happen? Because managing it effectively is the key to saving money and making everything run a whole lot more efficiently.